Hello everyone, this is Abhi Kalia and I warmly welcome you all to the 5th episode of the Gir trip series. I hope all of you are doing great. Right now, our Metre-gauge train has just started moving from Sasan Gir station and is heading towards the Viswadar line. Now, I would like to inform you all that this stretch from Sasan Gir to Viswadar junction will be a bit of a repeat. We had already covered this section yesterday in the episode number 2 of the series when I travelled by the Junagadh to Delwada passenger. But for those people who have not watched episode number 2 of the Gir trip series yet, do not worry, I've already shared the link in the description box below. Do check it out whenever you get time. Now coming to the Sasan Gir station, this station is located in the heart of the Gir Forest, one of the densest parts of the jungle, and if you people are planning to go for a jungle trek or safari in Gir or want to try your luck at spotting a lion, then this is the perfect station to get down. From here, you can easily take any local vehicle like auto or taxi or tanga to reach your hotel or resort and then book your safari. Reaching Gir Forest by the Metre-gauge train is also one of the cheapest travel options available right now. You just need to get down at Sasan Gir station and begin your forest adventure from that particular point. And yes, lions have been spotted many times from the moving train itself, especially during early morning time or cooler months. Sightings are quite common in these times. However, in summer, lions usually do not come near the railway tracks, often due to the heat factor. Still, chances are good, and that's one of the reasons why I decided to travel by the Metre-gauge train through the Gir Forest. The dense forest stretch will continue all the way till we reach Nes Kansiya station. So stay tuned and enjoy the views. Let's see what the forest reveals to us today. Now we have just passed the Nes Kansiya station and our train is slowly moving towards Satadhar station. The beautiful forest stretch continues even now, giving us more time to enjoy its vibe all around. The stretch is truly peaceful and refreshing, especially when you're traveling in an old school Metre-gauge train. It just hits different. We will continue through this forested route for a little more time until we reach Viswadar junction station. So just sit back, relax and enjoy the forest vibes till we reach Viswadar station. Now as we move ahead, I will notice some abandoned stations and old rustic buildings along the way. These ruins of the past take us back to the old days when the Metre-gauge line was full of life and activity. Looking at these broken station boards, faded walls, silent platforms, I cannot help but feel nostalgic. It reminds me how important and efficient these Metre-gauge trains once were, especially for the local people living in the countryside of Gujarat. For them, this was the most affordable and convenient mode of transportation, whether it was to travel to the nearby town, sell goods in the market, visit relatives, or go for medical needs. These trains were truly the lifeline of rural Gujarat. Even today, watching this train move slowly through the forest and past these forgotten stations, we can feel that connection to the past, a time when life was simple and these trains were a daily companion for so many people. So now we have arrived at Satadhar station. It is a small halt nestled quietly in the midst of the forest. Not much crowd here, just the calm surroundings and the old charm of the station building. From here, we are just about 8 kilometers away from Viswadar Junction station. The forest cover is slowly beginning to clear up as we move closer to more inhabited areas. But the journey so far has been truly peaceful and refreshing, especially with the old world vibe of the Metre-gauge line. So let's stay on board as we approach Viswadar Junction station, and I will share more stories and visuals from there. The stretch between Satadhar and Viswadar Junction is simply breathtaking in its own unique way. As we move ahead, the dense forest starts giving way to dry patches, stretches of barren land With scattered trees and open landscapes, there is a certain raw beauty in this emptiness. It may look dry, but the vibes are something else. There is no rush, no sound, just the sound of our slow moving meter-gauge train, the wind, and the endless horizon. Moments like these make me realize that what true journeys are really about. It's not just about the destination, it's about feeling every bit of the route, letting the landscape speak to you and getting lost in the moment. This stretch may look quiet, but it says a lot. You just need to feel it. Now we inch closer to Viswadar Junction station. You can feel the change in the surroundings. more signs of settlement, a few houses, and distant sounds of the daily life starting to appear. Our peaceful forest journey is gently transitioning into a more bustling zone. Viswadar Junction is not just a major halt but also a place where many memories and connections are made. People boarding, getting down, locals waiting, and the classic charm of the Metre-gauge life continues. Let's get ready as we enter Viswadar Junction station, and I'll take you through the station and share more insights once we halt there. Here we are at Viswadar Junction station. So we would be halting here just for a few seconds. From Viswadar Junction station, our train would proceed towards the Amreli Para bound main line. And on the left side, we would see the track bifurcating towards Junagadh side. The building here, just look at it. It really feels like something straight out of the Metre-gauge days. The cylindrical structure must have been a water tanker. So this was used to fill water into the steam engines. Just a small site, but it brings a big dose of nostalgia from the golden era of Indian railways. Now we are proceeding towards Amreli Para bound main line. The landscape here is mostly dry with open fields and scattered trees. As we move further, the area becomes more inhabited with small houses, farms, and local people visible along the way. This stretch truly gives you the feel of rural Gujarat, a calm, earthy vibe that makes you feel connected to the countryside soul of this region. Local people now start boarding the train, and most of them are from the deep countryside belt of Gujarat. Here, even Hindi is not commonly spoken, and the local dialect can be a bit tough to understand at first, so you really need a bit of patience and a smile to communicate. It is all part of the experience when you're truly exploring the heartland of Gujarat. Closer, you will notice that landscape becomes even drier, with wide open lands, scattered trees, and the typical semi-arid countryside feel of Gujarat. This stretch gives a real sense of how life flows in the interior regions, far from the city life, quiet, simple, and rooted in tradition. Now let me tell you one of the best parts of this entire trip that I truly enjoyed was the chugging sound and the eruption of smoke from our YDM-4 Metre-gauge diesel locomotive. The old school rhythmic chug chug, the slow pull of the train, and the way black smoke rises As the locomotive gained speed, it was just something else. It took me back to the classic metre-gauge days when trains had their own soul and character. There is a raw beauty in these fighting four engines, the powerful sound, the occasional horn, and the slight jerks and sways as they pull across the countryside. If you've ever stood near the locomotive or watched it from a train window, you will know the thrill I'm talking about. Unlike electric trains that move silently, this one lets you feel every moment of the journey. The sound, the smell of diesel, the puff of smoke, everything together creates an experience that is hard to forget. For someone like me who loves the heritage railway travel, this was truly a highlight of the trip. The YDM4 is not just a machine, it's a memory, a vibe, a piece of our railway history still alive on these tracks. Now we have arrived at a small countryside halt station, a place so tucked away from the urban world. It feels like time slows down here. The station itself is simple and humble, with just a short platform, maybe one or two benches, and surrounded by mud houses, farmlands, and trees swaying in the dry breeze. It is that kind of place where the village wakes up not to an alarm clock but to the chug chug sound of the metre-gauge diesel engine. The locals gather near the tracks, some waving at the train, some just observing quietly as life briefly pauses during the halt. There is a kind of stillness mixed with energy, something only these interior village stations can offer. Moments like these remind us why journeys on these old lines are so special. You're not just crossing places, you're feeling the heartbeat of rural India, where every halt tells a silent story. Truly, the vibe is beautiful, raw, and unforgettable. Now we've come to a halt near Dhari station, right before the old semaphore signal, a classic sight from the good old metre-gauge days. The train waits here briefly with the engine gently idling, and you can hear the sound of the village life blending with the train's hum. It is just a matter of a few seconds, and soon we will be on the move again, continuing our journey deeper into the heartland of Gujarat. The charm of these small stations truly fills the air as I travel through this beautiful countryside belt of Gujarat. And when you see a meter-gauge train crossing at such stations just to let our train pass, it brings tons of nostalgia rushing in. The sound of two diesel locomotives chugging, the slow movement, the old style station board, it all feels like a scene from the past. In today's times, such meter-gauge train crossings are extremely rare. It is like watching a living piece of railway history still in motion. Moments like these make this journey feel even more precious and unforgettable. The little hustle and bustle at the station adds even more to the nostalgia I'm feeling right now. In these meter-gauge stations, life remains so simple and beautiful. No rush, no chaos, just locals waiting calmly, chatting with each other, kids playing around, and the station master walking with a lantern or flag in hand. It is a kind of peace and charm that you rarely find in big stations today. This is the true heart of railways in rural India, where trains are more than just transport. They are a part of daily life. Every halt, every whistle, and every familiar face on the platform tells a story of connection, routine, and timeless charm. train will be passing through a Bihar type area between Dhari and Chalala stations. Though it looks like a forest stretch, it actually resembles more of a Bihar type area with uneven land, dry thorny bushes and rocky patches scattered all around. The landscape feels a bit wild and rugged, adding a different kind of adventure vibe to this part of the journey.
કેટલાય વર્ષ થયા 70 વર્ષ કાઢી નાખ્યા આ ટ્રેનમાં. તો તમારે ઊભું રહેવું પડશે. ટ્રેન વહી જાય ચીપર પર કામ હાલવું પડશે તમારે. બસ સ્ટેન્ડ હાલીને જવું છે.
We have now arrived at Chalala station, a quiet little halt with that same rustic charm. From here, Amreli is not too far, just around 22 kilometers more to go. The next station we will be stopping at is Amreli Para as we continue this peaceful Metre-gauge ride through the heartland of Saurashtra in Gujarat. We are now on the final stretch of our journey to Amreli. The next station will be Amreli Para, and from there it is just a short run to our last stop. As the train gently rocks through the countryside, I feel like I am still in the dreamy Metre-gauge world. A world that is slow, soulful and full of stories. This was a much awaited journey, and now as it comes to an end, there is a mix of joy and a little bit of longing, because trips like these always leave a piece of them behind in our hearts. arrive at Amreli Para station, a little tiny stop but full of charm. The station is nestled amidst a pure village-like atmosphere, surrounded by open lands, small houses, and the simplicity of life at its best. This is the kind of place where time feels slow and peaceful, and I just love the vibe around this station. Now from here, we will continue our final stretch of the journey, just 2 kilometers more to Amreli station, our last stop on this beautiful meter-gauge ride. And here we are, finally arriving at Amreli station, marking the end of our long and soulful meter-gauge train journey that began from Veraval Junction station, a distance of around 150 kilometers covered in just 35 rupees. Truly a budget-friendly ride filled with unforgettable memories. This is the station building of Amreli station. It gives me the vibe of pure meter gauge days when Amreli was connected to Bhavnagar, Ahmedabad and rest of the places across Saurashtra by meter gauge links. There was pure meter gauge in those days running across Gujarat, including in Kutch, Saurashtra. Only the southern portion of Gujarat was functioning on the broad gauge system because that was a through passage to and from Bombay. As soon as I got down at Amreli station, I stepped out of the station, found an auto rickshaw guy to the Amreli bus stand, and the auto guy charged me just 40 rupees. Such honest and humble service you only find in these heartland towns. Once at the bus stand, I picked up a bunch of Amul charge to refresh myself and then booked my bus ticket to Bhavnagar, a 3 hours ride from Amreli. At Bhavnagar, I stayed at G1 rooms and dormitory, a very cozy, clean and comfortable place to relax. I have already shared the dormitory details in the description box. Do check it out if you are ever in Bhavnagar. And with this episode wraps up, and with it, our entire Metre-gauge journey across Gujarat, nearly 300 kilometers of travel on these charming, slow and beautiful tracks. It has been a soothing, wonderful and heart-touching experience, and honestly, I am going to miss this journey a lot. But do not worry, I have one more episode coming up where I will be covering the stretch from Bhavnagar to Ahmedabad. So until then, stay tuned, and thank you so much for liking, watching and supporting this series. Do share it with your friends. Do not forget to like, comment and subscribe to the channel. Take care and see you in the next episode very soon. अमूल की छाछ।
हाँ 20 वाली चाहिए, 10 वाली चाहिए, 17 वाली
छाछ जो भी हो, जो फिर दिख रहा है वो वाला।
मसाला छाछ चाहिए?
हाँ मसाला छाछ।
मसाला छाछ को 17 वाली कर दे।
थैंक यू। कितने टोटल?
35।